Savage Dragon 95 from January of 2002. Endgame. The finale to the Reclaim the Earth storyline. Doesn't look like it goes too well here. Dragon's arm next to a pool of blood with a reflection of Cyberface seen standing triumphant. Pretty cool concept for the cover. One that Erik Larsen had originally sketched out for issue 20, but ended up going with a different look there. Anyways, if you have the Gang War trade paperback, which I do not, you can see that sketch in the bonus material. Let's dig into this thing. We got the credits. Erik Larsen, writer and artist. Chris Eliopoulos, letters. Ruben Rude and Abel Motown, colors. And Josh Eckhorn, the leading manufacturer of non-prescription cough medicine. So we're not wasting any time here. Delivering that image from the cover, we find out that that arm was actually severed from Dragon's body or blown apart. So if you remember in the last issue, Cyberface just blew a gigantic hole in Dragon's chest and then continued his assault until his enemy was decimated. But you also remember, I told you, that's not the Savage Dragon. That guy is actually Lurch. Lurch, the shape-shifting morphling that Vanguard uses for combat training. So this was all just another ruse to lure Cyberface into this kill box, and then they pump it full of poison gas to knock out the son of a bitch. And then Lurch strips him of his armor and exits the isolation chamber, a bona fide hero. Everybody congratulating each other for a job well done. Not quite the final battle we expected, somewhat anticlimactic, so they will leave Cyberface as prisoner aboard Vanguard's spaceship, and we'll see how that plays out. Now, Mighty Man and Dragon are teleported back to Earth to clean up the rest of the dangling threads, like Rex Dexter, who is literally dangling from these cybernetic threads, nearly crushed to death by the metal tentacles. But fortunately, he's released from the grip of suffocation by our heroes here. So Rex Dexter survives. He's already become a fan favorite, and he'll continue to factor into the Dragon's life in a big way very shortly. But back in Washington, D.C., the remnants of the Vicious Circle are fighting each other in a deadly scramble, a battle to rule the planet now that Cyberface has been removed from power. Dung makes an appearance here. He's flinging shit everywhere. Skullface is giving this dude a noogie. But the heroes show up, and the party is over. Dragon pulls out the old Martian shrinking ray and starts blasting these fools. So last issue, Frank Darling searched for Rita and William because he said they had something that Dragon needed. Turns out it was the shrinking ray. So this is also just a callback to when Dragon shrank the Vicious Circle back in the previous universe before the Savage World. It's pretty clever. Let's see what else is going on here. Yeah, they capture all the bad guys, put them in the paddy wagon. And now Super Patriot is recovering from his reprogramming. He's joined by Dragon and two of his former teammates in the Liberty League, which is Mighty Man and Battle Tank. Looks like they're going to get the band back together. So back on that remote island, Freak Force is doing some topless sunbathing, and a gigantic crab emerges from the water. But it turns out to be a vehicle driven by Mako himself. So this crab tank is an Atlantean invention, and I guess Mako is familiar with how to drive this thing, so he offers everybody a lift back to America. Great. Let's get political. Now that they've overthrown a world dictator, there's a big question of what the hell to do now. Focusing on America, Dragon wants to reinstall the guy who was president when Cyberface took over, who was Bill Clinton. However, there's one problem. Cyberface killed him, so whoops. So Dragon asks, what about Gore? And Frank is like, yeah, Gore's alive. So Dragon then uses the most powerful communication tool that he has, network television. And he shoots a promo on TV and says that he's going to reinstall every single world leader that was in power before the takeover. So that sounds easy. Then he says he's going to go after the people who helped the previous dictatorship. And that line really gets a look of concern from the deadly duo. So this issue kind of feels like the season finale episode of a TV show. You have little cutaways and callbacks to characters from previous episodes earlier in the season, kind of bringing it all together. Also, we got John Day as the cameraman there. All right. And 3 days later, Dragon is back at the White House. We got Secret Service out there. Everything looks pretty normal. And Dragon has a meeting with Al Gore, he's basically installed this guy as president. and they talk over some details. But let's get kind of meta here, because this comic was published in 2002, a couple years after the 2000 election, when George W. Bush was basically installed as president by the Supreme Court over his opponent, Al Gore. So this scene does kind of feel like some bizarro universe, and I guess that'll all pay off later. Over here, Neutron Bob and Dragon, they've become friends, and the fans seem to like this guy, so they have a laugh. They part ways amicably, and this is not the last time that we'll see him. 2 days later, Dragon is back in Chicago, standing at the welcome mat of a giant crater where his home used to be. Then Rex Dexter, a.k.a. Battle Tank, he flies up and is like, "Dude, you owe me a favor. You gave me your word that you would enter the void and find my daughter." So then back on Vanguard's spaceship, there's a ominous short story here that unfolds. Wally, the flying eyeball robot, sees his buddy is well asleep, so he flies over to the prisoner's cell, shoots some laser beam at the wall, and the door slowly opens, revealing a sinister smile from that motherfucker Cyberface. Looks like he's about to escape his prison. All right, and whoa, that's a pretty quick comic, 18 pages. The last page here has Dragon gearing up to enter Dimension X in this kind of spiffy outfit with the red shirt and the yellow backpack. Some fans say he looks like Tom Strong, which is like a recent Alan Moore creation, but Larson says the inspirations for this kind of go back even further to Doc Savage and Captain Tootsie. On to Fanatics. Larson says to expect the issues to start hitting shelves fast and furious. He's trying to hit a June deadline for issue 100, and comics will be released every 3 weeks instead of monthly, so Godspeed. Got 6 pages of letters. Let's see. This one from Scott Neatlick, who asked about the pinups and from the centerfold. Why have they disappeared? So for years, there was always like great pinups, usually featuring a guest artist. And it seems like all the Image comics kind of did this in their early years. You'd have the artist name on one side, the pinup, and preview for next time. But Larson discontinued it, and definitely haven't seen these in a while. But Larson says that they disappeared because of space considerations. This is 4 pages of real estate that he needed to tell the story, so the pinups were sacrificed, especially if they wanted to keep the letters pages and the extra comics in the back. All right, what else we got here? Benny Hassa. He asked about what current comics Larson is reading, and Larson says, "I buy an awful lot of comics, and I read few of them. There aren't many I enjoy on all levels these days, in all honesty, but Cerebus, Hellboy, Sin City, Tom Strong, and the Myths of 8 opus generally manage to pull it off." So that's a pretty fairly solid list for that era. Tom Scioli making the cut. It's pretty cool. That's about it. There's mention of the new Super Patriot miniseries by Robert Kirkman, and just a lot of reaction to issue 93. Then we got more Dragon comics. That's right. You don't have to wait to see what happens. We're going into the void right now. And look at this place, man. What in the wide world of Steve Ditko is going on here? Dragon describes it as the Negative Zone, the Phantom Zone, and the Twilight Zone all rolled into one. So Dragon, he finds Rex Dexter's daughter, Lexi Dexter. She's in some kind of bubble here. Reminds me of like the TV show The Prisoner. And then one of those bubbles captures the dragon. And then this crazy-looking bug-faced guy, he says he wants to suck Dragon of his power. So cliffhanger. We'll have to see what's going on there. Now even more comics. This is a 1-page panel gag, Savage Tales by Nick Darrington, with a tribute dedication to Jack Cole, legendary artist known for his work in Playboy magazine. Pretty nice homage. There's I think I skipped a page, yeah. There's a 1-pager here by Matt Talbot, the Savage Dragon feature page, kind of a retro style and design with some infographics describing how his powers work. We got Comic Bits by Chris Giarrusso, starring his character G-Man, or is that J-Boy? And what else? We got Dragonbird by Carl H. Wraps this one up with the inside back cover. Finally, a preview of the next 4 issues, including issue 96 next week. Adios.